Peace, brothers. I hope you're all doing very well. I know my last few videos could have been considered for the general public, so I wanted to do this one just for the brothers, those that have been following my discussions and monologues over these years now on the issue and topic of the modern male progression, his development, his disposable position in society, and what kind of choices of outcomes he has, the self-preservatory knowledge and possible skills men might find useful. And I thought it might be just a bit of fun if we looked at the Lord of the Rings novel. So, Lord of the Rings began as a huge volume of fiction, which was eventually turned into a series of movies by Peter Jackson, obviously. But it's an old book, and I've been a fan of Lord of the Rings since I was a kid. And at first it was the fantasy aspect of good versus evil, that old cliche. And then eventually, as a teenager, I was just intrigued at the world created by this man, different races and different cultures, possibly as a parallel to our own. But now, as I watch things, as I return to my old childhood viewings, it's trying to understand what the writer and director is trying to convey. And in Lord of the Rings, the main item, which is the entire story, the entire premise of the story surrounds itself, is a ring. Now, the ring itself is visually unremarkable, reading from the description from the book and obviously watching the film. And at first, people will think, well, the power of the ring is to turn the wearer invisible to the living anyway. So it led me to believe that what Tolkien was really trying to say, that the real power of the ring, its purpose for which its maker made it, the power which every king and pauper covets the ring for, was the power of will. That the ring gives its bearer such drive, desire and passion to excel and find and the urge for power to bring him who wears it to rule. Hence the title of the ring, its name is the ring to rule them all. And I found this comparable to men's struggle these days, because when we, for example, examine the purpose of prison, the premise of modern day comprehensive government schooling, the self-evident outcome of misandry, the real effects all these have, the real purpose these things bring, is to break the will of man. And the effects of breaking man's will is devastating. Think about it. To destroy his will to live, to utterly lay waste all his dreams and kill his passions, to leave him like a shell which is easily controlled. He turns into a willing slave with no designs, no protest, no resistance of his own. It's no wonder such men turn to the validation of women, the seeming illusionary comfort of military or being assigned to some group to give him a sense of purpose or direction. Of course, those of us that have been through all that know that plastic purpose inevitably leads to man's demise. When they're finished with you, you really see what their intentions with you were all along. You really know how disposable you are. And men, sadly, when they come to such a low point, beyond being a shell of a man, beyond having his will destroyed, sadly adopts the wish to end his own life. Tragic ends to something I've always said had so much potential. It's cliche, isn't it? But it's a fact. I mean, what is the difference between a man who excels and a man who commits suicide? How many men began apparently with success and then ended up killing themselves? So the question lies, how do we return our will to us? How do we re-find our will? How do we reignite the fire that drove our destiny, that fueled our innocent wonderment of the world? And how do we know when we have it again? Now, I think to answer that question, one must ask, what is his mind made up for? What does his willpower consist of? Is it just a collection of thoughts, a collage of experiences built from the images he sees, the sounds that he hears, processed in his brain to produce a purpose, intention, direction? Those who remember my previous channel will probably already know my answer to that. But I think it might be best put as saying, the real war, the first battle, is in the mind. If you don't have your head straight, if you don't have your thoughts straight, if you don't know who you are, where you are, if you don't have a realistic, accurate situational awareness and what you want and where you want to be, if you are at constant war with yourself in your own head, any problems, all the problems will be infinitely exacerbated in the real world. Any problem, any threat you come across to your well-being will be met with no real opposition from yourself.